came after him, said no. Your existence as a mind is something you can only become aware of through other people. To reflect on yourself and understand that you have a mind is like looking at yourself through the eyes of an audience. Yes, you can shut yourself away with a bunch of anime DVDs, but sooner or later you're going to finish Attack on Titan Season 3, and you're going to look at your own reflection in the laptop screen and think, wow, I look a lot like my dad. So for me, one of the most interesting moments of No Exit comes about 2/3 of the way through when Garsan has an opportunity to leave, only he doesn't. And Sartre says that hell has no mirrors, so the characters can only see themselves through the eyes of the other people there. This is made really clear about halfway in, when Estelle gets very worried about her makeup, but she doesn't have a mirror to check it. So she has to ask Inez to describe how she looks. And Inez really fancies Estelle. So Estelle suspects she might be trying to flatter her, like, oh, your makeup is flawless, queen. Spit in my mouth, mommy. Estelle can't trust what Inez says she looks like. Meanwhile, Garsan has been damned to hell for blatantly cheating on his wife, as well as collaborating with the enemy when his country was invaded. He's guilty. Even if there was a mirror, he wouldn't be able to face himself. He's worried that he's a coward. And Estelle is very willing to dissuade him of that notion by having sex with him. She really fancies him. She's like, you're not a coward, you're a big, strong, desirable man, you're worthy of happiness, so get over here on the couch and let's do it. But Inez tells Garsan, Estelle would have sex with anyone. She just wants attention from a man, and she'll tell you anything you need to hear to get it. She doesn't really fancy you. She just likes the idea of somebody mildly attractive validating her. And even though Estelle says that isn't true, or even does it matter if it is, there's that little niggle planted at the back of Garsan's mind. One of Hegel and Sartre's big themes was recognition, wanting to be seen by other people in a certain way, and what happens when other people don't see us the way we want them to. And they're not just talking about other people saying nasty or untrue things about you, but what happens when those nasty, untrue things get inside your head and you start telling them to yourself. You've probably seen the film Inception, where they go into a guy's dreams and plant an idea. It's like that. Somebody puts a thought in your head and it grows. So it is kind of you, but it also kind of came from outside, like a colonization of the mind. It's quite appropriate that Estelle's worried about makeup. In the book Perfect Me, the philosopher Heather Widdows talks about societal beauty standards and the way they can get inside your head. And even if you know, on some level, that beauty standards are informed by racism and sexism and ableism and transphobia, or even just edited photos that aren't realistic, they do still pull on you. Years after Hegel, another philosopher called Frantz Fanon picked up on this idea of mental colonization. He was a black guy living in France in the 40s and 50s, so he experienced a lot of racism, and he found that that also got inside his head. And he was also worried about literal colonization. At the time, France had invaded and was occupying Algeria, where he lived for a bit, and also Martinique, where he was from. And he saw that at least some black people, on some level, swallowed that racism. They saw themselves as inferior, and were trying to be more like the respectable white people who'd invaded and occupied their countries, rather than embrace their own blackness and the potentially revolutionary ideas that might come with it. He wasn't the first person to have these concerns. American author W.E.B. Du Bois talked about it too, and it's the plot of the film Get Out. Like, that's a film where white people transplant their brains into black people in such a way that the victim is aware of what's happening but can't do anything about it. Mental colonization. Spoilers, by the way. It's not necessarily just about race. A lot of trans people can probably relate to what Fanon was talking about. I think someday some black trans person's going to write something about Frantz Fanon and transphobia, and it's going to be really, really cool. But anyway, this theme of somebody else hijacking your thoughts comes up a lot in philosophy and art and makeup tutorials. Although in all of those cases, we know that someone else is getting inside our heads. For me, one of the most interesting moments of No Exit comes when the door to hell opens and Garsan has a chance to leave, only he doesn't. A while ago, I made a video about a philosopher called Simon Critchley, who has this idea called split mind theory. The idea is that the human mind is split into two bits, the bit that we experience, and then the little voice that's always correcting and judging and looking over your shoulder and viewing you like an audience. And that can be a good voice. It can be the voice of your conscience, but it can also be colonized and tricked, either by a team of Inception dream lads or just comments on Instagram.com. Like, I, in the video, created this character called Mr. Not Good Enough, who was like my internal critic, who told me all sorts of nasty things, like I was fat and lazy or whatever. I've been pretty candid on the show before about my mental health. I made a video about a year ago about the philosophy of suicide, and it was also about my own suicide attempts and history of self-harm. I created this character called the Cosmonaut, who was like the personification of my mental health crisis. And apparently that video meant a huge amount to a lot of people. I still get emails literally every day from people saying that that video saved their lives, which is amazing. And people drew fan art of the Cosmonaut and did songs and wrote poems, and Regeneration Magazine wrote an article about it, and NPR in America shouted out a while ago, all of which is amazing. And not long after I started that video, after I made it, I started therapy. And my therapist, instead of focusing on the mind, asked me to describe how I physically felt in my body when I got suicidal. And I said, well, when I get suicidal, I feel big, but not like big and strong. I'm autoandrophilic, a degenerate pervert who's turned on by the idea of themselves as a sexy man. That's not a real thing. That's not real. That's just a joke for my trans audience. But I said, when I get suicidal, I feel big and clumsy, oafish, fat. I have a recurring fear that when I turn around in a crowded public space, I'm going to bump somebody and hurt them. And I told my therapist, when I get suicidal, it feels like I've been turned into Shrek. And she was Australian. And she said, you know, Shrek had friends. People liked Shrek. Which was honestly one of the most uplifting things anybody's ever told me. And she also asked, had that fear ever come true? Had I ever actually turned around and hurt somebody? And I was like, oh, it never even occurred to me to ask that, but no, that's never happened. And she said, so where did this idea come from? And I said, it came from about 2/3 of the way through the play. Garsan has an opportunity to leave hell, only he doesn't. So I guess hell can't really be that bad. He must be exaggerating it. In 12 Rules for Life, beloved psychologist and best-selling author Jordan B. Peterson says, if I stay in an unhealthy relationship with you, perhaps it's because I'm too weak-willed and indecisive to leave, but I don't want to know it. Thus I continue helping you and console myself with my pointless martyrdom. It might just be a person trying to look good, pretending to solve what appears to be a difficult problem instead of actually being good and addressing something real. So I guess on that reading, Garsan really deserves to be in hell, and he really is a coward. I talked to my therapist a little bit about YouTube, because God knows you need therapy when you've been doing it as long as I have. And I mentioned that around August of last year, I changed what I was making. If you've been watching my videos for any amount of time, you'll have noticed I went from this to this in a relatively short amount of time. And I had played with some more theatrical stuff before. My video on Hegel was before then and had some theatre in. I was using costumes and characters on YouTube like way back in 2014. It was around about the time I went to drama school to become a professional actor that it all got more basic. It was just me in front of a bookshelf. Partly because I didn't have a whole lot of time on my hands, and partly because, I had all these big ideas about things I wanted to do, but I guess I didn't really have the time. But around about the end of summer last year, the creativity suddenly came roaring back. And my therapist said, oh, that's interesting. So you went from a suicide attempt at the start of 2018 to getting your mojo back with a vengeance? What was going on in your life when you tried to kill yourself? And I said, life wasn't going super well when I tried to kill myself, obviously. I had very few friends, which was my fault. I alienated them. I was just a colleague to most. I can't think of a single person who looked forward to seeing me. In fact, frequently it was the opposite. Professionally, I was replaceable. Artistically, I was invisible. My YouTube channel was deeply immoral. It betrayed a deep character flaw in me, and it was the kind of trash that really only somebody without a creative soul can even make. If you ran an infrared scanner over me, I wouldn't show up. Dogs ignore me in the street, and the reason they do is because I don't have a soul. I'm just a horrible, fleshy English robot that's gradually breaking. My suicide attempt left me living on cheated time. I should have died. I've done nothing with it except commodify it to gain sympathy points from better people, and it wasn't even a serious attempt anyway. I wasn't even injured. I was in a very real sense unlovable literally incapable of giving love or receiving it, or even understanding what love is, which meant that it was morally wrong for me to pretend to be in love with my girlfriend at the time. I was living a selfish, vain, entirely pointless life, sucking up oxygen from better people, and quite frankly, I deserved to die. So it's a good thing that it occurred